council have moved forward. We had workshops with the community. We also had it on the agenda where Councilman Lee was prioritizing. And so we talking about the same street plan where we had prioritized, because one of the questions are, right, when you prioritize the dilapidation of that street, you also have to prioritize the usage of the street, right? And so making sure that we're bringing it on some of the streets that you gave examples to that were streets, or they just, you know, neighborhoods kind of just evolved.
Right.
How are we breaking the money down, and are we using what we've already spent our energy doing, or are we talking about doing something totally different? Because are we moving forward that plan?
Well, what we did before was we had a conversation on what streets. Now I put some dollar amounts to
Those
the
streets.
two worst streets, but, I mean, 115,000
It's not
kind of
good.
came back. The part that got me was, and again, I don't do this, so these numbers are somewhat new to me as well, but it was 115, but we still didn't have streets. You know, they were just nice clearing, but now we still have to go back, and just on those two main streets, we don't have asphalt. And we have other people saying, you haven't even cleared ours yet. I mean, and some of them say they've been asking for years. Yes, sir.
Yes, I think also what Jones and Roland was speaking to. So in the street plan, it wasn't just two streets. There was a multitude of streets. So
Mhm.
even if Marie Antoinette and Joan of Arc were of a high capacity in terms of the dollar amount, you know, there were a multitude of other streets that were also prioritized from the worst to what just needed some work on. So I guess the question is, even though you relayed the information about the 115,000 for those streets, what about the rest of those streets, and what is the plan for those streets if we're not gonna put all the money towards those specific streets?
Well, the streets that you identified in, I think, the street project that you and Councilman Jones did before, all those streets, we've already had asphalted. So we've been working on streets other than this, but when you get to this particular area, has the highest concentration of people who live on those streets. So they were the first priority because the people are already there. We've got several where people own the land, but no one's living there, you know, no housing yet. So we need to get around to them. So that's why this was the biggest thing. As a matter of fact, several of these people, a few times, came to city council, you know, asking for help. And that's why I started there, because between you, your project identifying them and residents living there, we've already extended the water sewer there. We need to go back, I believe, and we need to take a look at maybe another lift station. But this is a housing area where people are already housed. That's why this is the first quote that I focused on.
Yeah, so you're basically saying that we need to come up with a new plan. Because even with Marie Antoinette and Joan of Arc, we could take a stash of that money, set it to the side, and as we get more tax revenue, you know, then go whenever we have the right amount.
Yes.
We can go and put it toward those streets, and then the other streets that are still identified, or that we need to do a re-identification. If all those streets that were already on the street plan were taken care of, then we continue to make a plan for 2020 going forward.
Yes. And remember, this particular quote was just for, and it was more than that because it went down and then it curved over. And I don't remember the new street because it's not like, it's a street on the map, but it's not a physical street yet because it hasn't been cleared. So we were looking to try to, you know, do more while we were clearing. Let's, you know, make that difference with where all these people are moving to and where we can already get them water and sewer. Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, I do want to
Yes,
say, I appreciate our maintenance guys who come out and try to keep up with the holes on Orange Road. And some of those holes on Orange Road are horrific. Students have had flats and so on and so forth. So my question is, can we get with Waller ISD? And is there any way we can work with them to try to fix Orange Road and some other streets that are heavily traveled also by school buses, which I'm sure there's a lot of them, but I can only speak of Orange Road at this point. So have we ever spoken to Waller ISD about it?
The superintendent and I had one meeting. That initial meeting had to do with H.T. Jones. We actually had one scheduled today, and they had, turns out, 2 suicide young people's deaths in the school district. So, understandably, we canceled it, but yes, we set a date for, basically right after the holidays to address that and some issues at H.T. Jones as well.
Okay.
Yes, so we'll be seeing if there's something they can do to assist, then we'll be going forward with that, yes. Yes, sir.
For the streets, since there is a subdivision, do you currently know the specs in which those streets should be identified as?
No, that will be from the technical people. I don't know anything about specs.
I can speak to it. When it comes to roads, you have certain grades of roads that you can
Yeah, why don't
develop.
you come on up so everybody can hear, no problem. We appreciate you being able to assist with it.
So when it comes to road, there are certain grades by which you can improve or put in a road. And to be honest, you get what you pay for. If you put in a cheap road, you'll be back doing that same road again 5 years from now. You put in a good one, it'll last 10, 15, 20 years. So you kind of decide how you want to invest your dollars on that.
Thank you, sir. Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Just to kind of piggyback on what everybody else has kind of said, I think if we go back to when we developed the road plan, nobody, imagined that it would be done in one fiscal year, overnight fix. And so I think, kind of going back to what Councilman Jones said about finding somebody who can give us an overview of the cost of what it's going to be to prepare or to put in the roads throughout the entire city. And even if we put bids out for a company to do that part, because at the same time, those companies are going to want to do business when it comes to those roads, because we're talking about a large amount of money. So there are companies that will do those studies at a discounted rate. Some of them will do them as if you bring us on to do business, then the study is free type deal. But the thing is, we need to know the whole point of us doing that study was we prioritize the streets, and so now we have to start allocating funds to fix streets. So just kind of saying, well, this street's too much or this street's too much. Then we have money there that we could be fixing something in the street. And so the point of the plan was to put a revolving street maintenance repair plan to where once we fix the street, every street was on schedule to be repaired. And so now that street will be repaired again in 2027. And for 10, 15 years down the road, every street. So if somebody had an issue with their street, they could come into City Hall and they could figure out when their street was going to be paid. And so I think it's when we look about what the next step is as far as the plan, because we have the information about the streets. So I think now it's about finding somebody who's going to tell us, okay, if we wanted all of the streets paved, then probably it's going to cost X amount of dollars, and then we start breaking down how we pave the streets by level of traffic or however we chose to prioritize them in that study.
Good point. And I don't know, I think Councilman Rowland may be aware, because you guys went through a street thing before,
Yes.
and that took a bond.
It
You
did.
know
That
what,
was
you know
to-
what kind of company? Was it an engineering company that y'all did, like what Councilman Randall's talking about?
Well, it was two
Identifying?
things. We had to identify, we had someone come in and give us the bids. The bond was just the mechanism used to pay for it. But the process is the same process we're talking about today.
Mhm.
A long-term process, and how do you, one of the things was like, we did the roads, we constructed the roads, but we didn't put in, which again, the engineer alluded to, is that there's a maintenance to this, right? So we approved these roads 13 years ago. We did these roads, and so we have not put in a maintenance plan, because those roads 13 years from now, or 13 years later, which is 2019, need some upkeep. And so part of, I think what Councilman Randall is saying is like, if we're saying, okay, we have our roads, if there's 50 roads in the city, 20 of them are what we call priority major thoroughfares, and then we rank them based upon where they're at. We knew that was gonna cost a lot of money. But then I thought we had agreed that there was some low-hanging fruit. We had a small pot of money that some of it was just a repair and refix. And I think we're all on the same page, but we're calling it different things. So there's repaired and fixed. And then there's what you're talking about, Mayor, you're talking about clearing off an entire area that needs to be redeveloped and replatted, and whatever the priority is gonna be, we just need to say that that's the priority, and then get behind it and say, okay, well, what are we gonna do next year? What 5 streets are we gonna do next year? Are we gonna use half the money for upkeep, meaning fixing some potholes, and then half the money to go into design to actually get us the plan we need for the entire city? But it's a 2-part process, and we can only use the money, we couldn't use the bond money to actually do the, get the study to do the work. We had to use our current budget money, and then when the bond money came, we used that to execute, to pay for them to actually do it. And then we ended up finding out that because of the streets, some of the streets weren't all the way clear. So you would think a street is like this, measured this way, but they had been that way for so long that grass had grew, and it was about this much more left on the street. And so grass was covered this up. So when we paved it, well, we, the city, paved it, they left out, and then people said, oh, I like, it's nice paving, and then they're like, well, did you know that, there's another part of the street that was covered by grass, right? And then, but that goes into having the people to make sure they're out there, and we have good people around now to help with that.
Well, and I think you just did a good job of delineating why we're where we are in this short process, because unless I'm mistaken, all the streets, the low-hanging fruit that needed potholing, we started working on them like the next week. So we've been fixing potholes, but Marie Antoinette and Joan of Arc was in that report that y'all brought back too, or planned. So now we're at the point where I'm addressing this. But in addressing this and getting these numbers, and also taking a look at who else, needs servicing, and trying to take care of more of the city than just one area with the majority of our current funding pot, that's what I'm bringing back and reporting to council. Now, if council just says, hey, let's do that on that area, then that's what we'll do. But that's not the approach that I'm taking in trying to help with the monies we have to stretch it to do the most good. Because again, we've got streets where they look like just a forest, and it's supposed to be a street. Well, we want that clear too, because then some other people might do some things. Councilman Jones.
So what exactly direction are you taking?
Well, in following what you all shared, we fixed the potholes that you brought to us, okay? We're maintaining known potholes that are called in or that our guys see around the city. We've been doing some cuts in, and we're actually looking at and bringing back to council a piece of equipment that does the cutting. In other words, we're working on repairing the streets. I'm bringing to you now what we found with what is our known and more highly populated area. This is what that problem is. Now, let's just say this. In clearing down Joan of Arc and Marie Antoinette, and we're looking at this 115, what does council want to do? So I'm bringing you the information I've gathered. So if y'all want to make a decision, do it, or I'll just continue trying to make decisions based on the direction that we've received, because this is where we are. Yes, sir.
So I guess I have a 2-part question. I guess we'll kind of help with the decision.
Okay.
Councilman Wallace, when y'all created the initial plan, there was a list of streets, right?
Right.
And they were
And we-
prioritized.
Yeah, we ranked it
So is
on a
it-
number scale.
Is there any way we can take that list of streets and get an updated list of streets that have been repaired or had maintenance done since the list has been created? That'll kind of tell us where we are, and that'll tell us how we can allocate funds.
Yeah, I mean, I can send it to,
Well, I mean, that would be a question from the mayor, because he's making sure the streets are being repaired.
Well, we ran through that list, and we're at the
So we
worst
said,
point now.
we
So
said
all-
that we received that list for you to show, okay, this is the plan that council came up with, these were the 5, 6 streets. All right, we did this, we checked out this street, we checked out this street, bringing us back a report, basically to say this is where we are. and what
We can
we're
do that.
with.
That's no
And
problem.
also,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I met with 3 vendors, local vendors,
Mhm.
and we did I got the idea, from them to be able to contract, because we don't have the manpower right now to be able to fix our city streets, and they all did it free of charge.
They what?
They drove around, we drove around the city, as well as we looked at Maria Antoinette, Joan of Arc. We talked about different grading of the streets and different things to, use at the time. I think it was like, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Underwood, like, a road that's like used with lime, something of that sort.
That's part of the base.
Yeah, and so we talked about different roads as far as the base, and then being able to come back and fix that road and the steps to fixing the roads, and all of this was free of charge. And what we had talked about was the different specs of subdivisions. Different cities have different specs. So at one point in time, I talked to Mr. Underwood about the specs, and about you as well. But I guess we all have to get on the same page eventually one day, or else we'll keep running in circles and not doing the city any good, regardless of who does the project. I think it's a lot of things within the city that need to be fixed, such as streets. A lot of money went back into reserves last year for streets, which, as we see, we don't have any reason for that money to continue to go into the reserve, and for the citizens, taxpaying citizens, not to see anything back from, in which we should be fixing the streets, or at least I think we are failing the plan at this moment. We don't have a plan when it comes to any aspect, or we don't continue that plan due to different reasonings. But I think we all eventually have to get on the same page, or we do a disservice to our citizens.
Let me ask you a question, Councilman Jones. You remind me of something. Didn't you agree to spearhead that project? Like you say, you got that information. Where's that information so we can make decisions on it?
That's exactly what Councilman Randall was just talking about, as well as Councilman Wallace, when we brought back to you the grading of the streets. We did a ride around, and then we brought it back to you. And now, as you say, it's easy for, yes, we did bring. So how would you have known to fix different potholes within the city if we didn't bring back to you the report?
You brought a list of streets, and the list was actually on the agenda.
No.
The engineer's report and grading and all that stuff wasn't.
No.
Okay, so you have it. If you can get it to me, I'll follow up on it.
All right, so thank you. And then
Those things.
from that point, then you could go back and be able to make your checklist, as you stated before. So if you didn't have that, then you were not going to be able to provide us with an accurate checklist.
But remember, the checklist was based on those particular streets, the worst of which I just gave you a report on. But send that to me, but I got no information on engineers, grading, and you said you rode with 3 vendors, and you need to bring that back to us.
Councilman Wallace and as you just heard, the councilman just stated upon that project in which we put together. But I guess you didn't receive it, so we'll make sure to provide you with that information.
Sounds good, thank you. Councilman Wallace?
I think, once again, as we can come back, we need a plan. I think we need to start the process of starting that plan. So we have our next meeting will be January 13th, which is the second Monday of 2020. So I wanted to have a workshop, 5 o'clock, so we can start discussing a street plan that we can use for the longevity of not just 2020 but going forward. It's like the first step.
And if we can start with the plan that you all put
Yeah.
together, that would be great, thank you.
Do I need to make that an emotion, or can I make an emotion?
Sure, go right ahead, you got the floor.
So I move that we have a street maintenance workshop on January 13th at 5 p.m.
It's been properly moved and seconded that council have a street maintenance workshop on January 13th at 5 p.m. You heard the motion, ready for the questions? Councilman Rowland?
Is there, you know, going to be here for? I can be here, but I just.
Councilor Griffin, can we not have the workshop start and be at 6 and be, open up into the workshop, do the workshop, and then fall into the city council meeting? Anything?
So if you have your workshop at 6 o'clock, which is your time that you've already designated for your regular council meeting, you would need to separately list your city council meeting and starting immediately thereafter.
Okay. Okay, so we'll open the
Because
council.
you know it's not gonna be at 6, you might have to call it a special meeting.
So if we open the council meeting at 6 and then, close the council meeting, open up the workshop?
No,
Mr. Mayor, we could start the workshop at 5, but as long as we have
Three,
we
and
get
Councilman
that.
Roland Jones and me will be here.
Is that
Okay, then, then we can do it then. Okay, no problem.
Leave it at
So-
5?
Yeah, we'll leave it at 5.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman,
call for question.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Item 5, discuss and take action on written report from Trilogy Engineering, Bureau Veritas, USW, and attorneys review documents for compliance and recommendations on Panthill Apartments, Campus Edge, and the gates. Councilman Rowland.
Before I get started, I want to pass this to council. You got, in your package should be, the information from Bureau Veritas. They were the only one who sent back about not being available, but Ms. Cortez got us the documents we asked. I needed to, before we get started, we're gonna need to have this. Yes. Ms. Attorney Griffin, I'm passing out Article 10.
okay.
Are these two things together?
Yeah, they're together. And then, I guess, that is it. We'll go ahead and you can get started with them.
Yes. Councilman Jones.
I move that we go into recess to get a photo, upon the, sorry.
Actually, we just take it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We just take the photo.
Yeah,
For the things-
okay. They just want a photo out before they have to.